Let's pray, please, and get you going. Father, I thank you for this day that you have given us. Boy, what a crazy day, God. There has been just so much of those things that just keep us running and pushing. And I know, Lord, that many sitting in this room been through the same type of day. We just thank you that you have given us a day, and even in the middle of the insanity, we get to serve you and follow you. So please help each one of us to take every bit of our craziness, lay it to the side, stop, and listen to your word and see exactly what it's dealing with in our lives. We ask this in your name, Lord. Amen. Peter hits a section of this letter where he is wrapping everything up. In wrapping everything up, I have always admired individuals that have the ability to play a musical instrument. How many of you have the ability to play an instrument? How many of you ever tried to play an instrument, like in band or all of that craziness? Okay. I sit on a regular basis and watch the individuals that are in our church that do that. And the last couple of weeks, I have paid particular attention to the harmony, the blend of what is going on in music, and I get a little amazed at the individuals that stand up here and sing, and it is that close to being what it is and what it's supposed to be. It gets looked at as, oh, that's a particular expertise. In all reality, it is just repetition of fundamentals. I was raised in a family that, just being blunt honest, everybody was a hillbilly, and going to family reunions, listening to individuals sing. There's a whole bunch of my family that not only sings, but has that innate ability to do harmony in the old bluegrass style, and it's pretty crazy listening to them. But if you sit down and listen to it, it's just individuals that were able to deal with the repetition of doing it again and again and again and again, and the fundamentals of music. I spent years fighting. I've listened to all kinds of folks in the ring dealing with that, and they talk about, boy, some people are just so natural and have natural abilities. I agree with part of that. Most of it is because the individuals that are super good at what they do were willing to deal with what's called the basic fundamentals. They just kept practicing it again and again and again and again. And the problem with that is there's a group of individuals that can't do that. Some of you, the reason why you had an ability to get good on playing an instrument, but you couldn't do it because you couldn't handle the boredom of just playing the same thing over and over. And I see many smiles in the room, so you're one of those individuals. It is true in the spiritual world. We don't look at it like that. Most of us wish we could go to bed and get up in the morning, and when we got up in the morning, we would wish that we would wake up with all of this phenomenal ability to handle Scripture and have great wisdom and all of these other wonderful things, but it doesn't happen that way. For you to grow as a Christian, you have to do the same thing. You have to practice the fundamentals of the faith. We were in a discussion a little bit ago with part of the group here talking about it's amazing what I am learning in my Christian life. In the middle of that discussion, it came to the deducing that, oh, I'm reading the Bible. And it's funny how if you just start reading the Bible, and that's where the line gets drawn, is there's multiple people that want to grow in their faith, but they don't want to do the fundamentals. They don't want to deal with the things that they need to deal with. So saying all of that, there's a purpose in it. Here's Peter. He's wrapping up this letter, and there is a part of you that wants to go, oh my goodness, this is Peter who's very close to God, and all of the powerful things that he could say to this group of people that he's writing to, all of the what I would call infinite wealth of information that he's getting from God, he could just lay some things on us that are profound. Instead, he closes the letter with fundamentals. He just stops in the middle of it and says, basically, everything I've said to you and everything you're going through and all of the struggles and everything else, I am going to close this with the fundamentals. And so he hits the end of his letter and he basically just rapid fires things at us that we need to hear. I, just like you, have a tendency to be a little bit on the hard-headed side. And when God says to me, Frank, I have some things that I want to do inside of you, I have to wake up and pay attention to those things. So here's this group of people. They have listened to all of these things that have come from Peter. They have heard him talk about a couple of themes. One of the themes is submission. They have listened to him talk about submitting when you're in slavery or work, submitting under your government. He has talked to women about submitting to husbands. And so he comes down to chapter 5, verse 5, and has said all of the things that he has said now about elders. I told you last week that basically everything that was being said was to me. And so after saying all of that, he hits this verse, verse 5, and he says, you younger men, likewise be subject to your elders, and all of you clothe yourself with humility toward one another, because God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. The word submissive, again, is not new. It's a theme that has been throughout every bit of this. And so he stops in the middle of everything that he's doing. You have to go, okay, wait a minute. Why the swing? You're dealing with all of this different thought. Why didn't he just go, okay, guys, everyone in the church, I need you to understand that you need to be subject to elders? Why would Peter, who wrote this, go, okay, you younger men? Why would he stop in the middle of a discussion, a letter that he's sending to someone, and everyone in the group is going to deal with this? Okay, to give you an area to help you understand sensitivity. I have said it many, many times. Sorry, I've got to use it again, and most of you will do okay with this. Some of you might struggle. How many of you in this room have ever had a weight problem? How many of you have ever been there? Okay, so you can't hide that. For those of you that have had a weight problem like I did, or like some of you still struggle with in life, it's not something that you can hide. Individuals that have an alcohol problem, there's a lot of people, unless you've just been an alcoholic for years or fought drink, every once in a while, believe it or not, people walk in that door drunk, and I don't know because I'm not a drinker. I just think people act weird naturally, okay? That's who I am. And so, but I have 3 or 4 guys in the church that will literally run up to me in the service and go, so-and-so's drunk. I'm like, no, they're not. Yes, they are. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And so then I play the cat and mouse game. I walk up and, I feel like Biden sniffing everybody, and I can't smell anything, so I go back to the person. I don't smell anything. Are you stupid? And I'm like, well, yeah, the answer to that one is I am. And so me dealing with the reality of what's going on in my life, the instant in a group, and just so you know, I've been yelled at, the instant in a group that I bring up my weight struggle, someone will come to me when the service is over and go, I really appreciate it. Can you get off that? The reason why is that's what they're struggling with. And the reason is they can't hide. And so if you're in a group of people and you've got a letter being written to you, and the guy writing the letter goes, and the younger men, when they were sitting in their group, all the ladies would have been over here, older women and younger women, older men and younger men, and as we both know, most young men don't dig older men. So they would have been in 2 different areas. Gary, all the young guys would have been in the back. All the older guys would have been up the front, so you would have fit in well, okay? And so, but the instant he said it, when he goes, younger men, the instant he said it in the letter, everyone in the letter would have automatically, if all the young men were sitting over here, everyone in the group would have gone, and looked at him. Why then would Peter, writing something like this, call him out? Why would he do that? And so you sometimes when we're reading Scripture, we just hit words and we just go, you younger men, likewise be subject, and we just run through the thought and don't think it. You have to stop and go, wait a minute. Why would he take time in a congregation, if the group of people, to look at them and go, you younger guys, at the instant he said it, this was going to stick out. And then he said, be subject to your elders. Okay. One, I will not pretend that I am in Peter's mind. Two, I am not the Holy Spirit. And so I can't sit and say the exact same things that I would say here would fit there, because that might not be the case. And somebody sitting in this room is going to do it, because I've heard it done 100 times. Someone's going to go, wait a minute, time out. How do you know he's talking about pastors? What if he's talking about the older guys in the church and he's not referring to preachers? The answer to that is really simplistic. How many of you in this room understand what context is? Okay, so you're not talking about pink elephants and then you start having a discussion about blue cats. Okay, everything that's being said is being said for a reason, and the verses before here were talking about the pastors in the church, and he was using the word elders for them, and then he says, you younger men, while he's having a discussion about elders, he says, likewise be subject to your elders. So you younger men, that's the first thing that, wait a minute, is he changing directions? No, because he says the word likewise. Likewise simply means exactly like I have got done talking to everyone else in the congregation and speaking to the elders in the church, you need to be subject to your elders, okay? Switch gears then and go, okay, why would he have said that? Okay, historically it's important that we know some things. First and foremost, back in these guys' times, when they became Christians, they walked out of being in the Jewish faith. They walked out of Judaism. They're no longer in that world. They are in positions where if you feel God is calling you to be a pastor, you are allowed to do that. Back during their time, this is your test question for the evening, back during their time, the only way you could be a priest was if you were born in what family? Okay, so you had to be born in the family of Levites or you couldn't be a priest. Okay, it didn't matter how much you, on your face, cried out to God, begged the Lord, Lord, I would like to be a priest like so-and-so is. My cousin so-and-so was born in the right family, and he gets to be that. I would let God let me. It doesn't matter what your heart is. No, you don't get to do it. So now all of these years of I can't lead in that capacity are gone. And you are allowed to be the head in something, even if you're from another family. So there was this new freedom in the congregations that they could be able to do this. So the leadership in the church, whether it is men or women, don't have to be born in a certain family to do that. And I know someone in here with a good mind is going to go, wait. You just said women. I thought you had told me that women can't be pastors. No, but for the first time, women can do a bunch of things that they never could do in the body. They're able to be deacons, or by every once in a while, I'm sorry, I meet somebody that's from really old school tradition, and the church has deacons. How many of you ever gone to a church where there are deaconesses in the church? Cool. So female deacons are biblical. You are allowed to have them. Women are allowed to do other things in the church. They are allowed to lead in music. Back in their time, when they were dealing with the music, it was all men. Okay, all the men played the instrument. All the men did the singing. Women didn't get to do that. Now all of a sudden there's this freedom where ladies are allowed to do that, and they're able to use the voices that they're dealing with. And they've also been told that you need to major league on being an older woman and dealing with younger women. And the things of being an evangelist, women were able to do that. Always watch when you're reading through the Bible about women and men. Always remember you have to pay attention to the job that they were doing. If they were doing a job that was outside of the church, they were allowed to do all kind of things in reaching people that didn't know God. If it was inside of the church, sometimes there were rules that were dealing with that. However, how many of you have noticed that most ladies are not as insane as most men? Now, every single one of you in this room are going like, oh, no, that's not my experience at all. So you have to now go, wait a minute, what are you now talking about? I'm talking about what goes on in church life when God is dealing with establishing leadership. Most women are not combative and warriors about doing that in the church. Men are. Okay, I've been doing this thing long enough and dealing with individuals. I have a son, Zach, that stands up here leading the music. Zach is going to one day be senior pastor in this church when I'm gone, or senior pastor in another church. The whole time I was raising Zach with all the music, I just thought Zach was going to be a music person. I've kind of figured out Zach likes preaching. Have any of you noticed that? Okay, so every once in a while I'm standing back there, he's talking, I'm going, give me my time. But that's that gift that is there. The problem, so you'll understand what I'm dealing with this biblically, the problem is have you ever noticed that young men a lot of times, unfortunately, don't think that the men that are over them have any idea what they're talking about? So young men are very driven in a world because God designed leadership in them, and it's particularly bad in our society, where men are being pushed into a world of no longer being able to be men. Everything is being pulled away from them and ripped away from them, where basically they're supposed to be like neutered males, or they're supposed to act like females, and it goes all the way down into our kiddie stuff. If you go back there in the kids department, have you ever noticed when you're watching that most of the little girls are just having fun and doing nice little things, and the guys are throwing each other off the wall and kicking each other and beating up some little girl and whatever. And I've listened to people yelling, knock it off, quit acting that way. I'm sorry. It's a boy. And if you get a whole group of little boys together, you're in a war zone. And I have 3 grandsons in one family, and I always love the fact that my daughter sends me pictures of them out on their property, and they all 3 have bows and arrows and knives and guns, and none of it's fake toys. It's all real as the day is long. And they're shooting everything and gutting everything and doing all this stuff. And every once in a while, I appreciated David when he was real little. He was in a class over at a church for a vacation Bible school, and he offended the living daylights out of the teacher because he wanted to share with everyone in the class how exciting it was that he was getting to gut a deer when he was 6. And the teacher did not appreciate that whatsoever, and I wasn't helpful because I told her to grow up, but that goes. It's guys. And so when you start letting individuals deal with as individuals, particularly in their world, Peter looks at them and says, okay, for the younger guys that are in the church, you are more enamored with your own ideas. You tend to be the individuals that are pushing and fighting for prominence. This is the thing that you wouldn't want to do. He wouldn't have been talking to the older guys about this because most of the older guys, more mature, doing the things that they're supposed to do. He wouldn't have been talking to the ladies in the group because he had already dealt with the issues that he was dealing with them. And then the last thing that we have to tag onto it, probably the other reason why he's talking to the younger guys is because the younger guys in the group are individuals that eventually are going to want to be pastors. And so he looks at them and says, you need to grow. I will take just one little tiny bit of that so it fits in the world that you're dealing with. Hi, believe it or not, I was a young man. How many of you believe I was actually young at one time? Okay, cool. And when I started into the ministry, I was super young. And starting into the ministry super young, I got ordained when I was 21 years of age. So being ordained young, you understand that you can run the risk of being prideful. Okay, we were also number 8 in the world in baptisms and had built the largest church that had ever been built in the state of Illinois. You understand how arrogance can get to going. And so my dad and one of the other pastors in our church probably told me to shut up 1,000 times. And one day, finally, they all took me out for lunch and said, we're going to have a conversation. I knew I was in trouble when the restaurant that we walked into, they had a booth in the back already reserved waiting for us. And I went, oops, this is not good. And what they wanted to say to me was, hi, shut up and grow up. We don't care how good you are at what you do. We don't care how many teenagers are involved in the youth group. You need to learn something called humility before God has to teach it to you. I didn't listen. So he did. And he said, the problem with you is, sorry, I can give you the paperwork to verify it. Your IQ is 30 points over a genius. You think you're brilliant. You have a mind that is unreal. Since you won't listen to counsel, I'll do it to you the hard way. So I laid down on a surgery table to have my tonsils taken out, and I died in surgery. And my brain was without oxygen for 5 minutes. I walked around into walls, had one seizure after another, talked backwards. If you ever hear me preaching and I'm tired in the pulpit, you'll hear me say words backwards. That goes all the way back from when I was really young. And for the first time in my life, I realized when God says I can't use pride, I use a humble person, I got humbled beyond thought. I was so mad at God I couldn't think straight. So God used another Frank, police officer, that walked up to a car and asked the person if he could see their license, and the guy stuck a .38 out the thing and shot him dead in the head. And he had to learn to walk again and talk again, and he talked about how God used that to humble him. And I sat in the meeting listening to him and sobbed my eyes out. I was 24 years old when I was in that meeting. And from 24 to now, you have a different pastor than you would have had God not done that to me. So why I'm saying that hard story to you tonight is not because, oh, that makes this Bible thing much more easier to understand, but it makes this Bible thing much more easier to understand. Because what you're dealing with is a guy who looked at young men and said, hey guys, be subject to your elders. Don't be a pain in the butt. Don't cause problems. Don't walk around acting like you know it all because you're young and strong and fast, and the old pastors are slow butts who don't get around as quick. Listen to them and be subject to them because they've been Christians for years and they've gone through this before, and you're a newbie and you haven't. Do you get the weight of all of that? Okay, now, this is really important. I'm asking, do you get the weight of all of that? Okay, now, you can take that and go, oh, okay, you younger men, likewise be subject to your elders. That's talking about guys, that's your jump. You're able to jump and go, oh, okay. That's talking about young guys who want to be in the ministry. Could be, but we'll just for working say it does. You young guys who want to be in the ministry, be subject to the elders. Listen to what the pastors are saying so you can grow like you're supposed to. Okay, we could stop there as long as you get that and just go, that's it. But you'll notice the verse doesn't stop because he says, what next? All of you. I hate words like that, don't you? Okay, after he beats up the young men for just a second, and you can picture it in the congregation as the letter is being read, he's reading all of this, and out loud he goes, you younger men, and you know that there were people sitting in the group that turned around and looked at all the young guys and went, see? Told you. Prideful, arrogant. And I know that the guy reading it in front of the congregation went, you younger men, likewise be subject to your elders. You know he paused. You know how important pauses are in speeches, right? He paused just so it would sink in. Just so the old women in the group could turn around and look at the young guys and go, And then he goes, oh, and all of you. And you know, every young guy in the back of that building went, So here's good old brother Peter, who was smart enough to hit them all, doing it through a back door. Okay, again, sorry, I have to explain. You're smart. Younger guys, be subject to your elders. And all of you, remember when you're dealing with Greek and Jewish individuals when they're saying something, you don't get to go, younger men, likewise, be subject to your elders. Oh, and all of you be humble. You don't get to go, those things are two different subjects, that they don't have anything to do with each other. Last week was for me dealing with the subject matter that I had to deal with in the verses that came before this. This week is you. He looks at them and goes, you younger guys, likewise be subject to the elders. And now he's talking to everyone in the group. He goes, and all of you, don't take it that he switched subjects. He didn't switch subjects. He's just saying every single one of you are dealing with this exact same issue. Okay, here's the problem. Being submissive to leadership in churches, particularly today, I know it was back then too, is really touchy. I've listened to pastors all of my life that have gone through this, and I've gone through it. There is nothing rougher about being in church life than being in a congregation that has no respect for authority and no respect for leadership. But I also know there is nothing more discouraging than irresponsible spiritual leadership. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm sorry. The latest. It's like Tony Evans. Every time I turn around, there's some preacher that people admire, respect, and love that is doing something just radically stupid. And we have to all read about it. And we have to sit there and go, my goodness gracious. And every time we hear about it, whether we like it or not, it makes us go, wait, what about my pastor? The only kick is, you'll notice we don't hear very many stories about church members. We just hear stories about pastors all the time. And yet, I would put before you that it is on both sides. I started this with music. I did that for a reason. Just asking you, how many of you enjoy the people up here that help you worship? Okay, would you agree with me they're really good? Okay. Do you know that when you get really good at music, you've heard this before, when you get really good at music, a lot of people talk about when they go to a church, the band is supposed to be leading in worship, but they're not. They're entertaining. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so one of the things that we do, just so you'll know, that we do at this church all the time, everybody that is up here periodically gets beat up with, you are not up here to play your instrument or use your voice, so that individuals out there are enthralled with what you're doing entertainment-wise. You are supposed to be leading them to worship. How many of you are observant? Any of you noticed in the last couple of weeks that I've been walking up here and standing here during the worship service and singing? Do you know why I've been doing that? Because the band yelled at me. Jerks. They yelled at me, and I basically said to them, who the snot do you think you are? I'm the senior pastor here. That didn't get me anything. What they said to me is, oh, you're supposed to worship too if no one's told you that. How many of you notice I like using the word shut up a lot? Yes. They're annoying. But the reason why they're annoying is because I'm annoying. I'm annoying because, I want you to worship God. I don't want you to stand here and go, oh, wow, man, what a great voice. I don't want you to stand here and go, oh, isn't he phenomenal on that? I want you to go, isn't that a great God? Then I get to worship a mighty Lord. That's what I want you to do. So it is their job to lead you in doing that. Okay, I know you're going to find this really hard to believe, but in the 26 years of Oakwood being in existence, I have had more problems up there than I have with my whole congregation. Because a whole bunch of times I meet people that want to be up here doing this, and they have no spiritual depth whatsoever. They have just been used to the fact that people think their voice is so great that they're just a wonderful human being. And they don't appreciate hearing me not appreciating that nonsense. We literally at one time, many years ago in our church, had somebody that used to sing that got upset and informed us they had only had so many specials in the last year, and they had counted them. And so when I was hearing that in front of everybody, I went, boy, what kind of jackass are you? Everybody in the group was a little shocked that I used such a strong word, but my goodness, you counted out the amount of songs. What is wrong with you? Because it's supposed to be about him, not, right? Okay, well, the problem is, if you're the leader in this, well, I'll give it to you another way. How many of you have ever watched The Voice or American Idol or any of that? Have you ever seen when they're doing the thing and people are trying out to be on the thing? Have you ever listened to someone sing and went, what idiot told them that they could sing? You ever done that before? You ever listen to somebody and they're just giving it their best and you're like, who told you you could sing? Okay. Some people really think, you do know that if you record your voice while you're singing and listen to it, it doesn't sound like what you're hearing in your head. Everybody know that? Okay, so the voice that I'm hearing while I'm teaching you right now is not the voice that is on the stuff when I listen to my sermons. I'm like, who is that guy? Okay, so we run into issues that we have to deal with. Why I'm doing all that is, or why I'm saying everything that I'm saying to you tonight is because this has been an ongoing problem forever in church life. Instead of us sitting and looking and going, wait a minute, God told me that I was to be subject to some things, whether it was as a slave in work, whether it was with my government, whether it was with hubby, or even now whether it is with my pastors. And then he told me in doing that I was supposed to clothe myself with humility. Okay, the problem that the instant you hear that word clothe, almost every one of us who are Americans have a thought about clothing. We think, oh, clothe, like putting on a shirt or putting on a blouse or some other clothing, whatever. The Greek word there, don't worry about spelling it, but it's enkamboomai, and that's not what it means. How many of you in this room have ever worn an apron? Okay, how many of you have ever worn what's called a work apron? And I'm not talking about something that a lady wears in the kitchen. I'm talking about one of those things that's heavy, it's rough material, okay, if you know what I'm talking about. The instant you turn around and tie the string that is here to make that hold together, you are dealing with the Greek word for clothe. Okay? This is not putting a shirt on. This is not covering yourself and draping yourself in some kind of cloth. It is dealing with knotting something together to hold it, and it's dealing with a work apron. And if you will please add in your notes, not only is it dealing with a work apron, but it is dealing with a work apron from slaves. And so when he says, clothe yourself with humility, he is literally saying, in your life, tie a knot or a bow and prepare yourself to serve as a slave. And he tells us in serving as a slave, we are to do it toward one another. So one of the words that I like to use for doing this is, clothe yourself in a one-size-fits-all garment of humble service. Take your Bibles and turn to Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. That's going backwards. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. My version reads, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do nothing. Circle that in your Bible. Do nothing. Anything you're doing that involves body life, that involves us as Christians, nothing can be selfish and nothing can be empty conceit. He could have said selfishness or of pride. When he used empty conceit, he was defining what pride is. Pride is arrogance in something that, quote unquote, you have no right being arrogant or prideful about. He said, so everything you're doing, don't do that. Do it with humility. thinking of yourself, it's in the Greek, the word is lowly mind. Think of yourself as lower than someone else, and your attitude is you're supposed to be serving them. Okay, so just so we make sure we're all on the right page with this, everyone in this room understands that everyone in this room is everyone in this room, right? That was really deep, right? I sound like Kamala Harris now, right? Everyone in this room is everyone in the, you know what I mean. Yeah, that's her. Anyway, everyone in this room is Christians, and everyone in this room is part of a church. And sometimes we forget that. We get so involved in what's going on, we forget that when he uses an expression that I'm supposed to do this toward one another, that means I'm supposed to look at everyone in the group, everyone sitting here, as I'm their servant, and I'm supposed to have lowly mind and not look at myself as better than them. My goodness, that becomes a bear. Because there's all kind of things that play into everyone's thought processes. Somebody that owns a great big multi-million-dollar company and someone over here that's on welfare. Our brain puts them in two different places. A man or a woman, an adult or a kid, an older individual that is moving around kind of slow versus we do all these weird thoughts, and yet God said, no. That's not what you're supposed to be like. There's not supposed to be arrogance coming from you. And I'm sorry, I deal with me. Okay, it's not one of those things that when I'm teaching this subject matter that I get to go, oh, this is all about you bunch of wretched church members. No, it's me. I said what I said about music people, and that can be construed to be, well, that's really ornery saying that about music people. And all the music guys that are up there do what they do and respect me because they know I apply it to myself before I ever apply it to them. You got a case in point. We're at a Bible study. How many of you hate going to boring Bible studies? Okay, so I work to get ready to teach you so you're not bored out of your mind. So I do weird things like walk around and say weird stuff and raise my voice and do other things. Or talk about subjects that are really real, or tell some story about what happened to me when I was a young man so you never forget it. Why? Because I don't want it happening to you. I don't want God to look at you and go, okay, you wouldn't listen to the directions. You wouldn't deal with being humbled. And you don't get to play games with God. You don't get to say to God, well, I'm unimportant, I'm nobody. God might look at you and go, yo, sweet pea, you don't know how important you are to what I'm doing. And so since you won't listen to me with your normal life, I'll put you in a position where you have to listen to me. And you have to pay attention. And so that whole growth process becomes me going, okay, I don't get to do anything with selfishness or empty conceit. I get to do it with humility. And that humility is the key that it is supposed to be directed at one another. Why? Because God is opposed to the proud. Okay, I don't need to get into definition of words. You guys will understand what being opposed to something means, right? Okay, God is opposed to people that are proud. That was the same sin that brought Satan down. God's opposed to that. That's not anything of anywhere that's going to get anywhere with him. Ooh, but he gives grace to the humble. You've heard me define grace many times. Unmerited favor. So if you're wanting to know, how do I be subject to elders, and how do I serve in a position that I serve everyone, I do it by not having pride. I do it by being humble. And the moment I do it by humility, he said he gives unmerited favor, so God will give me the ability to do that. Do you understand? It's just me doing it. It's me stepping into it and going, I'm going to serve. I'm going to be there when no one else expects me to be doing. My wife called me the other day and she said, hey, Frank, hon, we need to, they need some people to help with some stuff at the church picnic. And she said, there's a group that's getting there early to do the parking. She said, like, you're the head guy in charge, so you'd be really great in the parking lot. People would definitely listen to you. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to have a field day with this. And so I told her, oh, yes, honey, I'll come along and help you. Amen. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to stand out there and go, and I'm going to make Robin do it. Because Robin's the type of person that if I'm around, she doesn't do anything. If I'm not doing anything, it makes her do something. You understand my game plan, right? That's going to work until she gets mad at me and tells me to do something. Do you understand humility? So your Father said, I want you as a body to be submissive. And he gave us all those areas through the book of Peter. Slaves, work, government, family. And now he looks in our church and says, these are your leaders. And I want you to be submissive. And then he takes it one step further. Not basically what he's saying is, I'm not only talking about your leadership, I'm not only talking about your pastors, I'm telling all of you to humbly serve one another and put yourself in a position that the other people in the group are just as important as you are. Would most of you agree with me if most of us as churches could act that way, it would really change everything? You agree? Because in most churches there's a power struggle. Who's going to run everything? Who's going to be the boss? And there's always that dippiness of this one family's been in the church more than anyone. And that's stupid. It's sitting down saying, oh no, God, that's not how you use us. You don't use us that way. So the last verse tonight we deal with is 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6, where it says, therefore, humble yourselves, well, 7 also, I'm sorry. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you at the proper time. This is profound. All the Jews automatically understood what he said when he said it. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. American thought process thinks of this hand of God over them. When the Jews heard this, all throughout the Old Testament, the mighty hand of God is the hand that's in charge. It is an authority position. And so he says, because of, that's what the word therefore is again, therefore, because of everything I just said to you, to humble yourselves with each other and under elders in your church, he said, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. That means I am to go, okay, wait a minute. The hand of God is working through time in people's lives. And instead of me fighting against the hand of God, I need to humble myself under it and go, okay, Father, whatever you want of me. He said, if you do that, at the proper time, I will raise you up. Okay, that proper time becomes a word that gets us a little on the, because what it means is it means when it's the proper time in his eyes. It's that opportune thing. The Greek word is there. It's a seasonable time. It's when it should come into play. Have you ever been in any kind of position where you started feeling like you knew more than what was over you? We run into this a lot in jobs with bosses. Okay, we're in a position, and the boss is doing stuff that you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. But unfortunately, whether you like it or not, the boss is the individual that's going to dictate whether you take the next step or not. So just help me out with this. Why would God put you under a boss who has no idea what he's doing? Yeah. It's so I can learn that really hard thing of humility. It is literally so I can go, okay, God, there's a reason why you stuck me in this position. I'm with an individual that has no idea what they're doing. They're clueless, and you put me here. Ready? That goes all the way back in Peter to slaves working under a master. people being under a government. Just had this discussion with my wife today before I left the house. Are any of you just mind blown about the communist that they put in for being the vice president for the Democrats? He's 100% communist. I never thought I'd use those words. That's a new word. What happens if those twits wind up in office? I am to humbly serve in the position of a slave. I am humbly to serve in the position of my government. I am to humbly serve in the position of my family. Ladies, we struggle with that one. What if your husband's a twit? What if you look at him and like, gracious sakes alive? Oh. Slavery and government, you don't get much of a choice. You married him. You understand how all of this is a growth process, right? And so now here's these young guys and the whole church. We put you underneath the pastor. There's other pastors in this church. Ron, Zach, that will eventually be ordained. Tim just preached for me Saturday evening. He's growing in leadership ability in our church. Why did God put me here? There are many of you sitting in this room right now that you used to not go to this church. You were in another church. You felt led of the Lord that God led you out of that church into this church. You're mine. All joking aside, why did God bring you here? You got moved from Grand Rapids to this area. I'm sorry, Midland. She couldn't find a church to go to. She said, God, I need a sign. He drove her down Platte Road and showed her the Oakwood sign. I guess that's a sign. But God does that stuff because he's wanting to grow you to use you. So one of the areas you get to be a little more active in, more than those situations in the situation of your pastor, he's dealing with tying that knot in service of humility and dealing with the people that are around you. And you have to answer that question. Why did God put me here or put me with this person? What's he doing? He said, at the proper time, I'll raise you up. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God so that he may exalt you at the proper time. Okay, the question that will naturally come up before I dismiss you into your groups is, God, how do I wait on that timetable? He answered it. Having cast all your anxiety on him because he cares about you. Oh, put it in contemporary English. So all of my fretting and all of my worrying, I'm able to say, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to take that and cast it on God because he cares for me. If the Lord truly loves me, then whether I am a slave in government, the pastor of my church, marriage, my friends, whatever I'm under that humility is being practiced, oh, if I'm anxious, I'm supposed to say, wait a minute, you're my father, and you care for me, and so you have a purpose in my work or slavery. You have a purpose, whether I like it or not. If Twit and Twiddlepated wind up as president, then that just tells me Jesus is coming back sooner. Okay, if that's the case, how am I going to live underneath that regime? And if I'm dealing with my marriage or my church or my friends, God has me there for a reason. Whichever one of those things I fall into where I have the most problems. Some people, church is a breeze. Some people, their job is awesome. Some people, the marriage is the hard thing. Some people, their marriage is just wonderful, but their job is just ripping their life. Some people, it's church. And sometimes, yes, we're going through a really difficult time, and God says, no, I want you to stay. I don't want you to leave it. And sometimes God goes, no. Part of how I'm dealing with this is you need to leave. Does it make sense tonight?